Today I want to talk about the natural currents, the ebbs and flows of life, of being human, and really paying attention to our terminology. So just because something is uncomfortable, for example, doesn't mean that there's something wrong. Whenever, like I was thinking about it this morning, of like when someone is not in their, let's call what we would say their usual state. They're not like happy and whatever, in flow. We'll go, what's wrong? What's wrong? Is everything okay? And it's very interesting that we use that terminology because there isn't necessarily something wrong. It's just that the tide has changed a little bit, and that's really natural. That's really okay. But what I see, especially working with clients, is that they might be going through this lovely phase, and then they kind of hit a dip or they hit a plateau, and then there's the, what's wrong? What have I done wrong? What am I doing wrong? So I want us to reframe this whole thing of it's not wrong. It might be uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it wrong. And we need to just acknowledge that life, as the tides change, we change. We're cyclical beings. Nothing is ever stagnant or linear. And so how do we really come into flow, which I've spoken about in the past? Flow doesn't mean that it's always wonderful and great and happy and positive, but it means we're not in resistance. We're not in tension. So that's what we're going to dive into today, is to look at how can we be with our experience without making it bad or wrong. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. As you've heard me talk a lot about, is life is so much a matter of perspective, right? How we perceive life and our experience within it really affects and colors our reality. So this is why I like looking at, well, let's look at how we're perceiving things. How are we judging things? I really believe that once we let go of judgment, so much of life just changes. Our whole reality changes because we're not fighting against ourselves. And if there's one message that I repeatedly want to put out there, it's like, it's okay to be you. And it's okay to be human. It's all okay. Like there's just nothing wrong with it. But where we create suffering is where we add meaning where there doesn't need to be meaning, right? Or we add, we add suffering. I really like what this shaman said when I was listening to this podcast last week, that he was saying, he used the analogy of when you go from a hot shower to a cold shower. So he was saying, you're used to a hot shower, right? And the invitation is to start doing like cold. Now, he described the cold when it hits your body. For some, that's pain. But he says, what I want you to do is I want you to put your hand on the handle, right? Still warm. But what happens is that it's the mental aspect is what creates suffering, because they put their hand on the handle. It's still warm. The water's still warm, but they're going into the anticipation of the pain of the cold. That's called suffering, because he's like, you're not actually in the pain of it. And of course, then if you also reframe what that is, that it doesn't actually have to be seen as pain, that's a whole other thing, which I'll get to in a second. But basically, he's saying you're not even in the pain of the cold. You're in the anticipation of what that pain is going to be. And that's suffering. That's causing you suffering in the moment, even though you're under this warm, beautiful hot shower, right? So much of our suffering comes from our mind, comes from a perception and a perspective and an anticipation of something that could be, that's probably going to be bad. That's suffering, right? Or suffering can even be when we go into a story. Let's say it's even of the past, like a heartbreak of the past. The suffering is when we cling on to certain, we can have nostalgia, we can over glorify something. And really a lot of it is coming back into a reality check of like, Yeah, but was that good? Was that actually as romantic as I'm reviewing it as right now in my mind? So much of when we bring ourselves into emotional turmoil is because of the fantasy, the story, the projection, the perception, but it's not really the here and now, right? And it's just an angle that we're seeing through. It's a lens that we're seeing through, which we can change, right? That's the beautiful, empowering thing, is we can actually change it, but we have to get out of the habit. And so I wanted to just touch upon the word pain. You can also reframe what something means to you. Before, when I was pregnant and I wanted to have a natural childbirth, I never thought of it as something that would be painful. I still to this day wouldn't describe it as painful. Intense, yes, but not painful, because I didn't perceive it like that. I wasn't viewing it as, oh my God, it's going to be something that's terrible and painful and life-threatening. It was the complete opposite. And actually, it was the most miraculous experience that I've had. Like, super intense, but like miraculous, you know? And I guess I had a little bit of that training being a professional ballet dancer, you know, classical dancer at that time in point shoes, where I know I've shared this before, but just as a reminder of, you have to reframe what pain is. Otherwise you can't do it. You can't do it because you're going to be in physical pain. So you got to look at it in a different way. So all of this is about changing our perception. I mean, if you take the monks that can meditate like in in just a little tiny robe, I almost wanted to say it looks like like sometimes they're out there just looking like they're wearing a diaper and just they're in the snow. They're half naked and they're in the snow, and it's a matter of mental perception, right? What are you telling yourself? How are you perceiving this experience? And then even let's say there is something that really is painful, whether it's emotional or physical or psychological. For me, what I have just found is the I don't even know what the word is. I don't want to say easiest, the smoothest, the most peaceful way of being with discomfort is just being in the present moment with it. Because it's the story, it's what we make meaning of, it's the judgment, as I said before, that's what creates the suffering. And it actually pulls you away from the moment. So a lot of the time with like emotional pain, we go into the story of how, you were abandoned or rejected, or how your father didn't show up, or how your mother didn't give you the kind of love that you needed, or how this boyfriend or girlfriend, rejected you or cheated on you, or you know what I mean? Like, we go into all of that, and then that doubles the suffering, that doubles the pain, because now you have the experience that you're having in this moment, which might be uncomfortable and painful, and you're lathering on top, you're taking a nice like butter knife and just smearing a bunch of extra unnecessary suffering and pain. So it's always about like, come back into what is the acute visceral experience in this moment. But I want to speak to like the tides, the natural tides of just being human. So I'll give a personal example right now. I had this month of just riding the most beautiful wave, like blissful, feeling just joy and immense gratitude and vitality through me. And just, I felt so blessed. And that hasn't changed. I still really feel that. But my circumstances have changed a little bit, because I had 2.5 weeks on my own for the first time in, 10 years. And since being a mother. And that obviously was like, this beautiful fountain of just like, relief and release, and coming back to the woman that I am. And now that I have my daughter again, and it's this, I'm in full-time mama mode right now, full-time, because we're in transition. So she's not yet in school. Hopefully that will change in a couple of weeks. But now I've gone for having this like beautiful abundance of time to myself to zero. And so naturally I'm more tired. Naturally, I don't have the same kind of, full charge battery because I can't just be quiet, or I can't just do what I need. I'm being a mother. And so I can tell how these things have an effect. The moment that you become a little bit tired, that has a propensity, right, to change our perspective, because everything kind of dulls down a little bit. It numbs down a little bit. And also I'm recognizing that, everything ebbs and flows. The tide changes. So it's not looking at it through the lens of what society will say to you, which is, oh, it was too good to be true, so of course you're going to fall off of cloud nine. Like, that's why a lot of people are afraid to be excited about something or to enjoy being happy, because they're like, when is the bad thing going to happen? Right? Like, if I enjoy this for too long, something bad is going to happen. And that is a sick societal belief system. It's not true. It's a belief system. It's a belief system that comes from a very low density society that wants to keep you in fear, that keeps you in the reptilian animal brain, right? But not moving into the neocortex, into the superconscious that remembers who you truly are, where everything, like you go into the quantum, everything and anything is possible. Limitless. You are limitless, right? So we're also needing to remember that we've got kind of two brains, and that we're the human and the divine. And we have this history. Well, both actually. I was going to say we have this history of like the reptilian animal being that we are, but we mustn't forget that we also have this straight highway to source, right? And all of these things can block it, but it's there. We just have to remember and reconnect. So things have a natural ebb and flow, So these days I've had both an experiences that were really lovely and expanding. And in moments I felt kind of tired and a little bit like lost. Like, if I were to describe how I feel right now, there's something like I can feel a tenderness in my heart. I can feel that there's like a little bit of a yearning for something, or like an anticipation, or I'm waiting for something. There's like a little bit of a sweet sadness inside of me. And yet, like yesterday, I went out to go watch the sunset, and the sea was very wild. Normally it's very flat, but it was very wild. And I felt like it really reflected the kind of not turmoil, but the movement, the churning inside of me, that when I feel tired because I'd had very bad sleep due to a very loud concert outside my apartment, not too far away, till 3:00 in the morning. But there's a little bit more of a vulnerability when we're tired, right? Because we can't hold ourselves up maybe in the same way, or the tiredness has a way of kind of, bringing us into these more dense experiences, feelings, embodiments. But the sea was reflecting the kind of the churning, the emotionality, the tenderness. And I could feel a little bit like the pull to want to go into some kind of state of being, to give it some kind of meaning. I could go into the story of what am I doing? All of this stuff. And then I was like, no, just be here now. Like, just be here now, because actually right here, right now, one, is all we ever have. But two, it's really quite beautiful. Like, I was looking at this wild sea, and I was looking at the sunset and the shimmering light on the water. And I was looking at the sea being, some days it's totally smooth and flat like a lake. It's placid. And then yesterday it was wild, and the waves were crashing on the stone, the rocks, and just making these beautiful splashes. But it doesn't judge itself. It doesn't judge itself for, oh, today I'm wild. Today I'm stormy. Today I have big waves, right? And the other day I'm calm and I'm serene. It doesn't judge itself. It ebbs and flows. The tide comes in, it comes out. Sometimes it's gentle, sometimes it's wild. Sometimes it's ferocious, but it never judges itself. And so I think it's like, wow, can we learn to be like the sea that is forever in the present moment, that is forever in movement? It's undulating, it's breathing, it's inhaling and exhaling. It's a live, energetic thing. We are that too, right? but without the judgment. Like we can learn to just be in the present. And as we take different shape, that's the amazing thing about water. And now that, there's all this study, no, I wanted to say all this study. There are some people that are doing amazing work around what is water. Veda Austin, for example, and how water is consciousness, and how many are saying water is like, of the divine. It's in plasma. It's in everything. It's between realms. It's in all living things need water, right? So it's this amazing, I don't even know, like elixir for existence, not even life. And what's so beautiful about it is it can take any shape, right? It can take any form and any shape, and it can be gentle, and it can be like a force to be reckoned with. But again, there's no judgment. It just is. So I love learning from the sea, and I love the analogy and what it represents of just this state of being, this state of presence, this state of constant change, and yet it's always consistent, right? Welcome to the paradox, my friends. This is really life. It's paradoxical. But letting go of this, like if the sea was like, oh, God damn it, I'm wild today. What's wrong with me? That's the suffering. That is the suffering. Otherwise, it just is, and actually can be quite beautiful. So when I'm working with people and they have gone through this, let's say they've had a phase where they had a spiritual awakening, they have all of these aha moments. Before that, let me back up. Before that was like trudging through the mud, like it sucked, right? It was painful. They didn't understand what the hell was going on. They're still in their old beliefs and patterns and the suffering of that. So there was trudging through the mud, right? It felt dense. And then they reached this point where there's just kind of this light bulb moment. It clicks, something opens up, and there's this this awe, this inhalation, this wow, okay, I get it. I'm seeing things through different eyes, with a different lens, from a different perspective. That's why we do the belief work, right? Is we get ourselves out of a false story, out of false beliefs. We take off those glasses, we put on clear ones, right? And then there's this beautiful wave that you're riding of the, that kind of quote unquote spiritual awakening, which is when we say spiritual awakening, it's just waking up to who you are. Just like, oh, I remember who I am. I remember what existence is, right? And then all of a sudden you feel in alignment, in harmony, in tune with, because you are becoming that which you have already always been. You're just remembering. And so then that feels like harmonious and beautiful and joyful. And there's an ease to it. Then you can bring in like noticing synchronicity and the magic of life. And it's exquisite. It's this beautiful orchestration, divine orchestration of existence. And then you ride that wave for a while, and then the tide changes. And then you might dip down into a place, and particularly for women, it was actually, I think his name is Damien Bowler, who was talking about this, and I thought this was so interesting. He was saying that men, when they process and the way they grow, it does tend to be more linear. I might have even talked a little bit about this last week. It is a little bit more linear, so that they take a little bit longer to get. That's why women are like, man, these men, they need to catch up and mature, right? Women are a little bit ahead of the curve, because we process things differently. So they take a little while longer. They're going a little bit more. They also have their cycles, but they are a little bit more linear than we are. But women will go forward and then they'll cycle back, and they'll go forward and then they cycle back, just like the cycle that we go through every month, right? And the coming back is the sweeping back around to clear away that which we no longer need. That's why we're very cyclical. That's why we shed blood, right? That is energetically the release of what do I no longer need. That's the moon when it's the dark moon, the new moon that empties itself, right? It empties itself so that it can regrow. and rebirth itself. And so that's what we do as women every month, and throughout the various cycles of our lives. That coming back, if in our linear society that is looking at always forward movement, then that seems like a step back. It's not a step back. It's a coming back to, what do I need to scrape out of the bowl that doesn't need to be there anymore, so that it can be this beautiful open chalice that can receive that water, that elixir of life, the divine inspiration, whatever it is that I'm the vessel and the channel for. It can fill me again. And then I'm constantly reevaluating, what can I let go? And that's the cycle. That's, when I talked about abundance, it's like that fountain that pours out and it comes back in and then up, and it pours out and comes back down and in and up. And that is the cyclical, abundant, never-ending source of life, right? And women are this incredible embodiment of that, both physically and emotionally, spiritually, on all levels, I would say. So sometimes clients will say, well, God, I'm going backwards. I've fallen back. And I'm like, no. It's like, think about, even if you follow astrology, planets go in retrograde. What does retrograde mean? It's a review. Review these past months. Review these past themes. What are the lessons that you need to get out of it? What are still the bits that you need to resolve, make sense of, clear away, let go? There's an importance to a review. I mean, people say that even when we die and we leave this body, that there is no heaven and hell. There's no judgment, but you go through a review with your guides of okay, let's review that experience. What was that like? What did you learn? What was the mission that you set out on? And, what did you experience along that line? What would you want to experience the next time? What do you want to learn more of the next time? Should you choose to come back? Reviews, we look at life of I'm going to be praised or punished. It's good or bad. It's right or wrong. You either approve of me or you disapprove of me. You include me or you reject me. Do you see how unhealthy that is to look at it from that perspective, rather than what did you learn? Okay, this experience, let's go back to the theme of this talk today. This experience is uncomfortable for me. Okay, but does that make it wrong? Right? If you're in an experience that feels uncomfortable, you've dipped back down, and maybe you feel down, maybe you feel uninspired, maybe you feel depressed, maybe you feel tired, maybe you feel lost, maybe you're angsting and yearning for something that is not yet in your life. But is it wrong? There's nothing wrong. Also, I want to throw in this, how is life happening for you rather than to you? So I'll give an example of a client that I actually have a few clients that are in similar situations. It's really funny. I get themes. But I have a client that has the feeling and the inspiration to move away. But it hasn't quite happened yet. They're taking the necessary steps, but it hasn't quite happened yet. And they've expressed how, where they are, that at first there was the difficulty of the idea of leaving, because of course nothing is ever black and white, right? When we leave something, there are still maybe good aspects of it. It's no different for a relationship. When we leave a relationship, when a relationship comes to an end, at the end, we tend to nostalgically be oh, but this was nice and this was good, and what if I can't get that again? And that, you know what I mean? We go to that and it's oh, no, but be in the reality. Is that relationship still alive? Are you still growing? And it's the same for a geographical place. Do you still feel alive in that place? Do you feel like you're growing? The soul wants to grow. The human wants to grow too. So it's not about giving up and abandoning before it's ripe, right? But it's understanding when it's overripe and it's time to, for whatever reason, move on, evolve, grow, take a different direction. It's okay. Again, there's no right, wrong, good, bad. There is no one right way. But it was very clear to this client that they've kind of outgrown this place. But the one thing that was kind of keeping them there was their friendships, their relationships. But then this dip was in that there was kind of oh, I'm getting frustrated with this place, and even, the friendships, that there's it's not satisfying me anymore, and I feel really sad, and I'm feeling a little bit down, and I feel like I'm isolating, and I'm lonely. And there was this real dip. And the way that I looked at it from the outside is like, oh, it's helping you to get out. Like, you've been wanting to get out and away, right? You've been wanting to move on. But the very thing that was holding you there, like now like if we look at it on a surface, it's like, oh God, this is making me so sad that these friendships, relationships they're not feeling as good as they once used to. And it's like, yeah, they're feeling like that because they're going, it's time for you to graduate and move on. Look in that direction. You're free to go. I'm not holding you back. You're free to go. So sometimes I've noticed this in my life, and sometimes I've taken it to too far a degree, and now I kind of got the lesson and I understand what it is that's happening and what I need to do. So the example is, often when I've been in a place and I can tell that that phase has come to an end, however long it's been, I will start to hate things about that place. And in the past, it's like I've complained, I don't like this, I don't like that. And it's like, yeah, because it's like a part of me. It's easier to leave something when you don't like it, right? It's easier to leave a relationship when you're like, find all the things that you don't like about that person, right? It makes it easier when you don't like it. When you love something, it's hard to leave, right? So, I now have got the lesson. It's like, oh, I don't need to go into that place where I'm just like being judgmental about the place as a way to get out. It's good to see, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. Okay, this isn't allowing me to grow anymore. It's making me stagnant, or whatever it is, whatever the realization is, but you don't have to vilify it. And normally I come back around and I can actually have appreciation for it before I leave. But the point that I'm trying to make is, how is life happening for me right now? If certain things I'm not getting fed in the same way, I'm not being inspired in the same way, maybe that is working for me to redirect me into a different direction, right? And so we have to this is where the profound trust for how everything is designed and orchestrated, we can look at it as like, it's not working, it's hard, this is depressing, I'm hitting my head against the wall. If we keep on battling through it, like it's the bee that's hitting on the window pane, right? When the one right next to it is open, that creates the suffering because we're in resistance. We're fighting against, whether we're fighting against ourselves on the inside, whether we're fighting against the circumstance outside of us, whether we're fighting against the idea of what we want it to be. Oh, I want to go off to a different area, but I want all my friendships here to be amazing. But if my friendships here are amazing, I don't feel like I want to leave because I'm going to miss them. But I really want, do you see what I mean? There's all of this like, that becomes really hard, complicated. So sometimes, like, it doesn't have to get to that point. Sometimes we can go, okay, I love these people and I'm okay to move. I'm okay to leave and start over somewhere else. But if that's too hard, life will go, okay, we're going to gently nudge you. We're going to make this a little uncomfortable for you so that you redirect and you turn a little bit to your right and you look in that direction, and then we'll give you the momentum to go there, all right? Because then when you go and you visit there and you feel, oh my God, I feel like this new breath of energy and inspiration. Great, follow that. Follow your joy. Follow your bliss. This isn't about running away from things. This is knowing when a chapter is done. And we have this kind of, for some people, they live in the same town their whole life. For some people, they're in the same relationship their whole life. And for some, it's the total opposite of that. There is no right, wrong, good, bad. There is no one way. But follow your bliss, follow your joy. And just know that part of the journey is the tides are going to change. It's going to ebb and flow. Sometimes you're in that beautiful, like it's all just gorgeous and it's flowing. And then sometimes it's going to fall flat on its face and you're on the plateau. And the plateau is always where they say it feels like nothing is happening, but everything is happening underneath the surface. You have to plant the seed in the soil first. And the soil is dark. It's the underworld, right? So you have to sometimes go through the darkness. Sometimes you have to go through the blindness of not knowing, like the seed can't see anything, right? It's in the darkness, but it has the intuitive, instinctual just design in itself, knowing that it is growing towards the light. It knows that it's going up. It's not going to, well, actually it's also going down, right? You can only go up if you go down. And roots, plants, trees are such a beautiful example of that, is you have to have the roots in order to grow up and have the stem and then the branches or the leaves that, they're in order to go up, we have to go down. So the whole point is like, just because you're going through a flat phase or a hard phase or a down phase or a depressed phase or a challenging phase or whatever the hell it is that you don't like, right? Don't see it as something is wrong, that you're doing something wrong, that it's bad, that it's taking you off course. What would it be like if you were to see it from the eyes of, how is this working for me? What am I moving through right now? And you don't even have to know where it's going to take you, because the importance is to stay in the present moment, but to stay in the present moment, trusting and knowing there's a reason for this, right? And my job is just to be present with it, to pay attention to it. And, even if it's like, this sucks, this is really uncomfortable. Okay, can I relax into it? I could either be in a state of tension and create suffering, or I can breathe and relax into the discomfort. I can relax into the pain. And if your truth is, I fucking hate this, it sucks. Okay, that's your truth. Can that be okay? Be with that. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with you. And if someone is like, what's wrong with, what's wrong? Are you okay? Let's go do this fun thing. And you don't feel like you want to do that. You can just say, oh, there's nothing wrong. I'm just moving through something right now. That's it. There's just some clouds in the sky. The sea is a little bit more rough. There's zero wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm going to hone that in. I'm going to be the voice in your ear right now that reminds you again and again and again, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your experience. Sometimes it's just uncomfortable. That's it. It's okay. It's all right. It will eventually change. It will always eventually change. But don't hang on to like, this needs to change, this needs to change. That actually will delay it. I found for me personally, and I can only speak from my own experience, that the more I allow myself to soften and surrender into whatever I'm experiencing, the faster I will move through it. But the point isn't to move through it quickly. The point is to be with it, and it will move at its own pace. And time is an illusion anyway, right? Time is a total illusion. Again, this shaman, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Sometimes I'm really bad with names. I listen to a podcast at night and fall asleep, and I don't remember all the details sometimes. But he was saying that, it's really important sometimes for us to just do breath work to literally slow down time. And because time is totally relative, right, to how we perceive it. It can either go, super slow, like when you were in school and you were bored and you're just waiting for that hour to pass. Or it could be like, oh my God, where did the time go today? Like when you're a mother and you're a kid and you're like, geez, I really have to go pick them up. Like, where did the time go, right? It's all totally relative. So he spoke about the importance of bringing your heart rate, like slowing it down, having the more breaths you have per minute, the more in a state of stress you are. So really slowing it down, doing the box breathing where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And you do, some rounds of that. Again, it's all how do we perceive and therefore embody our reality. We're making it as we go. But yeah, I just want to leave you with this. The invitation today is to just look at your own perceptions. How, if I'm going through a phase that doesn't feel as comfortable and as joyful and as blissful, for me right now, I could go, oh my God, where has that like amazing ecstatic high gone that I felt so good and just blissful and full of energy and vitality? Where has that gone? Oh my God, I've lost it. What's wrong? Is this not the right place? Right? No. It's like, okay, these days I feel more tired. Yeah, because I don't have as much rest, because I'm having to put out more energy. The circumstances have changed. That's okay. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with this. the tide has just changed. So, okay, I'm going to be in this flow and I'm going to just tend to the emotionality or to the vulnerabilities or to the tenderness or to the different state of being. I'm going to I'm going to be slightly disciplined in a loving way to not give it more meaning than that is required. I'm not going to go into a story. And right now I'm really paying attention to, I'm not going to repeat the old habits. I'm not going to go back into the same old story. I remember, I'll leave you with this before I let you go. When I had a psilocybin journey, I remember at one point I kept on being brought back to this same room. It was a memory of when I was a child. It was a white room. There was nothing in it. There were no toys. There was no furniture. There was nothing. And I was left there because my mom was part of this kind of spiritual group, and they didn't have children involved. So if she was going to a meeting or they would do a lot of creative things. Like I remember this was for an opera. And what a beautiful place to like have kids running around and watching and listening. And sometimes they would, but in this case, they wouldn't. I had to be put into a different room. So fucked up in my mind. But anyway, that I kept on being brought back to that room and that memory because it was all about being alone. What was coming up was this theme of this belief that I've had that I'm alone. And I remember I kept on being brought back, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We're back into this scene. I was like, okay, there's something here that I'm being asked to look at and let go. And then it became so clear. I was like, all right, I don't want to play that card anymore. I don't want that on my CV. I don't want that on my resume anymore. I don't need to play that card. I get it. I got it. I saw it. I felt it. I experienced it. I saw how it played out in my life. And I was like, no, I'm letting it go. Now, the thing is, you can have plant medicine journey. You can have, like I do theta healing, you can have theta healing session. You can do these kind of instantaneous, like shifting of beliefs, where you can literally change a belief like that, right? We can instantly heal like that. But what happens is that we go back into the habit, so that we kind of replay that. So we have to, this is why if I ever do kind of the quote unquote subconscious work through theta or anything else, I also like to do the conscious work where you're also consciously choosing to change your behavior. You're making different choices, which changes your behavior, which changes the outcome, right? So, there was periods that even after that, even though I said I let go of it, that it would kind of sneak back in. But that was the moment. That was the opportunity. That was the choice point. Do I want to continue to play that card or not? Yes or no? It's my choice. Nobody else is going to do it for me. Nobody else is going to heal or fix me, right? That's an illusion. It's disempowering. So it's like, right. Yeah, I don't want to play that card. I don't have to go into that story. I don't have to go into that narrative. That doesn't have to be my identity anymore. So you let it go. And it might sneak back in, and then you can make the choice again. Okay, I let it go. All right? And where we want to come to is just like, I'm here. I am who I am. I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing, and that's okay. And I'm enough. Super simple. Not always easy because we're used to making it really fucking complicated. Excuse my language. So the invitation is just notice where you're using certain terminology and judgment to perceive your experience as bad or wrong. Take away the judgment. Take away that it's wrong or bad or that something you've gone off course. No, just pay attention to where you are. Listen. It will naturally inform you. It will naturally guide you in the direction that you need to go in. Right? But you can't get it wrong. You can't do it wrong. You can't even go backwards. If you're going back to review, great. Pay attention to that. Review, shed, let go, and then you will be propelled forward again. It's like the slingshot that needs to be pulled back to create the tension to then propel you forward. And then you fly. You have a quantum leap ahead of you. It's all a matter of perception. So the invitation is to let go of the judgment and to see it through different eyes. How is this working for you? Yeah? All right, that's long enough. I will leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.